Welcome, everybody, to the Start, Build, Grow Show. We have another exciting episode here, and today we're going to be talking about sales, high-level sales, how to build great sales teams, and just how to change the game and change the way you think about executing sales from someone who is a sales professional outside of the roofing industry. Obviously, we do a lot of stuff in the industry, in roofing and in construction, but I wanted to get a new perspective and share with you some new ideas outside of our little industry here to get you some amazing insight. Our guest today, his name is Pouya. He's been earning multiple six figures a year by the time he was 23 years old and jumped into the entrepreneurial world at 25. And right before that, he was managing 5 regional offices with nearly 70 salespeople. So I'm excited to hear that story, and we're going to talk and dive all in just a minute. Welcome to the Start, Build, Grow Show. All right, Pouya Haidari. Did I get that right, my man?
That's correct, Randy.
We got it right, man. I'm excited to connect with you here and share your journey. Welcome into the show, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome. And I didn't go into that part of the bio, but you're from, are you still up in Canada? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm in Canada and pretty much moved over here since I was younger, so I've always been here.
Okay. Well, cool. I want to hear a little bit of that story, and it's funny because we are now an international show. We've had a number of different. I have a lot of actually good friends I've built throughout the years. We've had a number of guests on here that reside in Canada, and I love it because every time I have a lot of friends up there, and it's a different world as far as you're just like the nicest people. Right, you can come to the U.S. and these big cities, and people are honking at you and cursing at you, and man, I feel like I could just like punch one of my good buddies, and he'd be like, "Oh, sorry, man, sorry." I appreciate you jumping on, and is that true? Is this like what makes Canada such an appealing place, and why are you guys so nice? Like, what's in the Kool-Aid, man, that we can get down here in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, it's definitely the stereotype. How much of that is true, I'm not sure. How much of it is exaggerated. We're definitely nicer, I think, by far than Americans. If we're going on a one-to-one counterpart type of deal, we're probably nicer, generally speaking. But I mean, I've been to the U.S. a lot for different conferences and business events and deals that we've had going on, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I've never had a bad experience either. So, it's just a stereotype about Canada. I think what makes us nice is probably has to do with the weather, the climate. When you have to deal with tough climates, tough weather, cold environments, you have to rely on, friends, community, family, your neighbors and whatnot. I think it just brings you closer. And I think there's more of a community sense in Canada than there is in the U.S. In the U.S., it seems like there's a community sense by state or by specific regions. But as a nation, I would say, Canada probably has a bit of that. So, I mean, I've also come from a different part of the world. I was born and raised somewhere else until I was 10 years old. So I've seen many different perspectives. There's definitely pros and cons, but generally pros.
I love that. And it's funny that you mentioned because, growing up in the States, I've traveled all over the States, lived in different places. Each region definitely kind of takes on their own characteristic, their own different like accents and all the different kind of mentalities of how they interact with one another. So anyways, that's not super important. That's just fun stuff. So let's start the story, man. You said, you immigrated to Canada. Let's hear your background, man.
Yeah, for sure. So I was born and raised in Iran. I lived in Iran until I was 10 years old. So originally Persian. I moved over here when I was 10 years old. And I think that was really the start of everything. So I'm glad we started there in this conversation because a lot of times one of the first questions that I'll get from people when I'm on different shows or just people that I meet is, what drives you? What makes you so driven? What made you want to get into business? And I always have to go back to this story because I think this is really the evolution of it all. I think coming from a different part of the world and not having those opportunities, being exposed to what, real challenge could look like. Then you come to Canada or the US and the Western world and you start to see the opportunities that are in front of you and you start to see the abundance in everything. And I think it's hard to take that for granted. I think it gives you a different sense of responsibility because it's almost not an option not to really tap into those opportunities. And that's exactly what happened with me. I moved here when I was 10 years old, and I've been in Canada ever since. And I just knew that all these opportunities in front of me, that I have to move on that. And that was the trigger really for it all.
Yeah. How'd you, going back to that place, I feel like there's definitely a similarity with, this is a show about entrepreneurship and about leadership in the construction trades and just in the world. And we bring on a lot of guests, and I feel like there's one commonality. All of us, something early on in our life got us started, created that fire, created that drive. And obviously, what you just shared there is a big contributor to that. But how did you get started? Like early on, like what's your story? There's always an interesting story about like, I did this when I was 12, or, I mowed lawns, or like in my case, I took my allowance and I went to Sam's Club and bought a box of blow pops, and I was hustling and selling blow pops out of the back of my backpack at one point when I was in like the 5th grade. So, what was your early entrepreneurial start, and how did you kind of realize that, this is something that I'm probably going to be doing at some point in my life?
Yeah, so like I said, coming from a different part of the world, I think it's just such a different culture that it's hard for me to even paint the picture. But just right then and there, I have a million of those entrepreneurial stories, quote unquote. I never had a lemonade stand because that's not a thing over there, right? But we were doing, playing cards and betting as little kids, as like, 7-year-olds, and kind of like hustling each other, in the streets and trying to, just for the fun of it, but also that entrepreneurial spirit was there. So a lot of that type of gamesmanship, if you want to call it, or just sort of salesmanship, back and forth with friends, playing in the streets. A lot of that was always there. So I think that was a factor. And then again, contrast that with coming over here and seeing all of the opportunities and the actual availability of, businesses and getting into business and whatnot. And then, I started little things at that point. When I was in high school, I remember I made a little studio, a fitness studio, out of my basement, and I basically put up these ads and flyers and everything without being licensed or trained or anything, that I'm going to be personal training individuals, because I was very much into fitness. I was playing sports, I was playing soccer, rugby, I was working out in the gym, so I wanted to just help people get in shape. And I had one guy email me, just a random guy, and I quoted him at, I think, $40 per session, something like that. Just made it up. Came in, gave me $40 cash. I trained him. He gave me a couple of referrals. That became a little side business just in high school, again, without a certification or a license. So I did a lot of that stuff as well, obviously, but I just knew that I need to get into business, because I knew that I want a better life for myself. I knew that I don't want to go the formal education route. I'm not going to go to school and do the traditional stuff, because I don't want the traditional results. And I figured, if I want to be an anomaly, I have to do things that an anomaly would do, which are, just get more creative, get into sales, get into business. So that's really how I got my start, and then pair that with a lot of self-education and working on myself.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's something to be said about, wanting to, if you want unique and different results, you hold yourself to a higher standard. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, whether they're at the end of their career and they still have never actually launched that business, there's that little flame inside that's just, I want to do something extraordinary. I want to do something for myself, and I want to, make something happen and take control of that. And unfortunately, so many of us don't actually do that, because we think we want to have it all figured out first, right? We want to have all the ducks in a row. We want to have all the licenses. We want to have all the ducks in a row. We want to have the clients and the money. We want all of it first. All of it's just lay out. But the reality of it is, if you're listening to this, you're most likely you're an entrepreneur. And maybe you're not getting started, or maybe you haven't started yet, or maybe you're reaching a kind of a block or a ceiling. You just can't quite go to that next level, or can't quite get over whatever it is you're trying to get over. You just got to jump in. You just got to try. You just got to make things happen. Because I believe that if you fail fast and you make mistakes, you learn twice as fast as you do when you plan and prep everything. Maybe that's a little naivety of just that, the ready, fire, aim mentality. But I think so many entrepreneurs have that. And if you don't have that, that's the challenge. That's why a lot of us don't actually take the plunge and make entrepreneurship happen.
Yeah, I actually really agree with you. I think a lot of people tend to overthink, and they get into the classic paralysis by analysis, where they just, don't really move into action ever. And if you're going to think everything through, you're going to be stuck forever. I mean, good luck trying to figure out every step of your, business plan in advance. Good luck trying to, get all the clients at all the right price points, at all the right offers, in advance, without trial and error, without testing the market and all of that. It's just not going to happen. So as an entrepreneur, but also really as an individual, I think just in life, it's such a huge advantage to have a bias towards action, to always lean more towards action, lean more towards getting things done fast. And I remember practicing this on a very micro level. If I'm walking by the kitchen and I see dishes, I'm going to just jump on them, get them clean, get them done, move on to my day-to-day tasks, right? I mean, I use this in every part of my life, and I'm almost very extreme with this, as I am with a lot of things, which I personally enjoy. I prefer being on the extreme side, right? And I'm the same way with everything. Every little thing that needs to get done, I just get it done right then and there, because I don't like to add time to decisions. And I think that mindset really translates into sales, translates into business, and it translates into the standard that I hold others to, whether it's my prospects, who are looking to do business with me, whether it's my friends, family, network. I think it's a really important trait to have.
Yeah, I love that. Take action, even in the little day-to-day tasks. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, because it by taking, like, there's a book I actually just downloaded, I haven't read it yet, but called Make Your Bed, right? And it's just it's the concept of get up in the morning, complete something, complete an action, complete a task, set your day off the right way, and don't just get up and check your phone and deal with whatever fire you got. Like, take control and take action and make something happen. And the little dish thing is, man, I'm that way too. If it's there, I just want to get it done. Like, what is it? Like, they call it like the 2-minute rule. If it can be done within 2 minutes, do it right now. And if it needs more time, then put it in your task list. And then when it's on your task list, prioritize it and either eliminate it if it doesn't need to be done, or get it done when the timing is right. All right. So let's circle back to sales. The topic of the day is sales. How'd you get into sales? And let's go into that piece of that background.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason I decided to even venture into sales was because I wanted to get into business. I wanted to be in business for myself eventually. And I figured, again, if I want that lifestyle, if I want to be running my own show and really, live a life on my own terms, which, again, for me it had to be in business, I got to learn sales first. I got to learn client acquisition, revenue generation, client retention. I got to learn these different metrics. Now, at that point, I didn't know all these names and what that really looks like. I just knew I got to learn how to get a client to pay me. I got to learn how to get money in the marketplace. And that was sales. So I figured that's a good, stepping stone into getting into business. It also allows me at a very young age to, make friends with a lot of these managers, executives, the business owner themselves, and, actually build those connections and really grow my network and learn on someone else's dime. That is my university, right? That is my college. That is my schooling. It's going into business, being in sales, getting paid for it, and also learning on someone else's dime. So that was the reason I got into sales. And also, I was lucky enough to be introduced to Jim Rohn and his teachings, which had a huge impact on me. So I really started the self-development route with his teachings. It led into business philosophy, if you want to call it that. So started to read a lot of business books, and all this is around 16 years old. And pretty much right then and there, I knew that I want to pursue this path. I just knew, as Jim Rohn said, self-education will make you a fortune. Formal education makes you a living. So I knew self-education is the path that I want to take. And that got me into sales. I worked in 7 different industries, skin in the game, involved in these different industries, just learning. I would spend 1 to 2 years in each industry on average, and pretty much just learn the ins and outs, put up some numbers, really make my name in that industry, really, learn from that product knowledge, that industry knowledge, that specific knowledge that I was taking from there. But the main key point that I was focused on was sales knowledge, business knowledge. The fundamentals is what I was focused on. So I was constantly looking at what works across every industry. What are the pillars, if you want to call it, the principles for success in business in general. And then got into, I know we'll dig deeper, but I just want to give you the full story. Got into outsourced sales. So I was actually going into large corporations. These are multi-billion-dollar companies, some of the big telcos and whatnot, and also some celebrity entrepreneurs. And I would go in and hire, train, and develop their sales teams, build the processes, systems, and scripts, and so on. And then eventually ventured out on my own. So it was almost like a ladder. And in hindsight, it seems like a natural progression, and it's all simple. But obviously, lots of ups and downs. It was a whole journey. But that's what it was, basically.
Yeah, the journey, we talk about that all the time on this show. The journey is the actual destination, right? There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. We got to learn and grow and get better every time, right? So would say 7 different industries. A question, side note, what was the worst industry that
That's
you
tough.
were in, and what was the best industry?
Yeah, I've never been asked that, and it's I almost don't want to give you an answer because then I'm putting all of those people on coming at me. They're all going to be.
Okay, let's rephrase it. What was the most challenging industry to master in sales? Put it that way.
I'll answer anyways because now everybody knows that's the same question.
Then we got to have some controversy on here, man. We got to keep the listeners on their feet here.
You know what? I'm with you. I get told a lot I need to be more controversial because usually I'm just straight to the point. So worst or most challenging would probably be the auto industry. The auto industry was definitely the most challenging, but I was going to give you a different answer for best industry, but I could also say best industry was also the auto industry because I learned the most. It was the most challenging, the most difficult, but everything I learned in terms of negotiation fundamentals, really sales fundamentals, a lot of what it takes to survive in that type of industry, some of the characters in that industry, the dynamics between multiple different departments and what it takes to just run that one dealer, let alone a chain of dealerships and let alone what it takes to run the entire industry, but just all the different departments, all the different moving parts of this one business. Yeah, it was by far the most challenging, being in long, multi-hour deals, a lot of negotiations, a lot of haggling, as you know, a lot went into that industry that I learned at a young age. I think I was 20, 21 when I was in the auto industry. So there was a lot of learning, huge learning curve for me. But it was also one of the best because I learned and grew the most. But my favorite industry that I was in was really the sales training and consulting space before I ventured out on my own and doing exactly that myself. I worked with a couple of big names in that industry, and that's always been one of my favorite things because I've always had a love for sales itself, for business itself, and for learning itself. So working with a lot of different businesses in that space was definitely my favorite, which is why I pivoted and continued to do that on my own terms.
So you were doing sales for a consulting firm? Is that
yes, consulting firm,
or coaching
and also
sales?
A couple of well-known entrepreneurs in that celebrity online space. So I was basically helping on a couple of their projects and businesses and building out processes and systems and whatnot. I was also very involved in what they were doing on the other ends of their businesses. So I just learned a lot. I got to really be on the inside and see a lot of the back end, and definitely learned a lot there.
That's awesome. So in that space, like, what would you say is what stands out the most as far as like, what did you take away the most from that experience working with celebrities and working with, we'll call it the knowledge space, right? Like the selling of knowledge, like the trading of knowledge. What would you say what's your biggest takeaway from there?
The biggest takeaway would be there's a need for it. That's for sure. Too many entrepreneurs, business owners, I'm sure a lot of your audience right now would say, they're not sales trained, would say, I'm not good at sales, or I don't like sales. I don't want to sell, and if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, not only are you in sales, not only, you probably do sales without even knowing you're selling, but you better like it and do it anyways, even if you don't like it, because that is your business. Top line revenue is your business. That's sales. Without that, you don't have a business. You have a hobby, right? So I learned there's a real need for it. There's a real demand for it. And I also learned there's a real gap in the marketplace when it comes to good sales processes, good sales systems, duplicatable systems that actually work. And, it just kind of really busted that myth of these, big companies and these quote unquote celebrity entrepreneurs, because I just realized there's nothing special to it. It's just expertise in one domain, in one area, and doing the work for decades and decades and getting to that level. It really was a matter of just simple logic. It wasn't easy, but it was very simple, the recipe to their success. And I think just seeing that up close at 23, 24 years old was very helpful because it just allowed me to see the reality of those levels of success. I'm talking like 9-figure plus levels of success, and just those numbers sound ridiculous when you hear it, and you can never imagine yourself being at that stage. But when you go on the inside and you see it, and then you interact with these entrepreneurs who are at that level, you realize, they're just normal human beings. It's just mastery at the highest levels, just like anything else, just like sports. The greats have these recipes that they leave behind. You just got to pick it up and repeat the same process.
Yeah, I mean, couple comments of, one of the things you said earlier about, like, I love the statement from Henry Ford, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing happens unless somebody sells something, and so many people in all the spaces, and a lot, and in our space, I'm in roofing, but I'm also in, selling of knowledge. I have a coaching platform, the Roofing Academy, that we sell and teach sales along with, the back office and business and systems and implementation and how to completely systemize your business and how to run your business by the numbers as well as sales. But, it's the whole concept of, what I was saying is there's a lot of, people that come into the industry or get into entrepreneurship or start a roofing company or a trades company or construction company from a place of being out in the field. So they just swung a hammer or they just learned a craft. They mastered their craft, and then they go naturally, progress into owning their own business, and sales becomes a challenge because they've never had to do that. On the flip side, there's a lot of companies that get started because someone was doing sales or selling for somebody else and decided, hey, I want to start and do my own business. And then they struggle on the production side. I deal with that dynamic all the time of trying to convert and help, someone who's a traditional, labor mindset to teach them sales, and someone who's a sales mindset to teach them like quality and labor and fulfillment. Right. So that's a dynamic that most people in our space come from one of those two arenas.
Yeah, I think you always have both sides, but I think you'll also agree. There's a famous saying, to your point, not every great salesperson is a great leader, but every great leader is a great salesperson. So I think we always have entrepreneurs and business owners from both sides of the spectrum. But if I look at the highest level business owners and entrepreneurs, almost all of them have come from a sales heavy background. And I've met a lot, and I've been to a lot of conferences where I've sat in front of a lot of, high-level entrepreneurs, and I've heard so many stories of, I was doing door-to-door sales for 8 years and whatever else. I just thought of one, Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, self-made billionaire, and her husband, Jesse Isler. I've seen him multiple times at different events, and I remember hearing Sarah Blakely's story, and she was just saying, how she was doing Xerox door-to-door for 8 years, I think. So, it obviously there's a direct correlation. Understanding sales at that level, understanding just. And when I say sales, I'm talking about the whole process, which is a huge mistake nowadays. I see a lot of younger business owners or younger salespeople making. They're compartmentalizing the sales process. So they're picking apart pieces and saying, I do this. I'm a closer, quote unquote, right? Or I'm an appointment center. I do lead generation. I only do this. You got to know sales from top to bottom. You got to know the entire process, because in the older days, and I'm not that old myself, but even in my days, if you were in sales, you knew sales. You were in charge of getting your own leads. You were in charge of the prospecting efforts, right? Inbound, cold call, whatever it was. You were in charge of qualifying your own leads. You were in charge of setting up your own appointments and doing the actual presentation or sales side of things. You were in charge of putting together the right offers for that prospect and presenting it and having that proposal, and getting a response to that and getting the deal wrapped up and then following up on it. And you're responsible for all the different elements of the sales process. So to me, I see sales as one big thing. It's one part of the business. So I think the highest level entrepreneurs all come from a sales heavy background, and there's no coincidence there.
Yeah. And it's like a rite of passage almost for those high performers, and I think something to be said about the commitment to mastering your craft. You're never going to be the master, but if you focus every day on the little details and put in the reps and do what it takes to be the absolute best that you can be, that's what separates the high performers from people who just do okay and just create a living or create a job for themselves, right? So I want to press in a little bit more, excuse me, on the sales process and like your process and some of the more high level stuff. And you talk about what your key takeaways and some of the key things, the key secret sauce, if you will, that you can take from all these different industries and plug into the home service industry and help people make success. But we're going to take a quick break and then we'll be right back.
JobNimbus is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn how the #1 back office system in roofing
can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
Roofers, you want at least 5 solid lead gen tactics building chemistry. Let's say you have door knocking, referral systems, job site branding, and you add in aggressive SEO, paid ads, and boom! Smells like more leads. hookagency.com.
All right, we are back, and this show would not be possible if it weren't for our amazing sponsors. So make sure to check them out. Go to the websites and inquire and check them out. We're back, and we're with Pouya Haidari, and we are talking sales, and we're talking sales from a little bit of a different perspective from home services. You've had extreme amount of sales experience, coaching, training, 9 figures, 8 figures, some amazing things you've experienced in such a short period of time. But now what I want to do is get the secret sauce, man. What are the things, what are the key takeaways? What are the key things that you've learned, that you teach, that you can share to a sales professional or an owner of a company that's trying to grow sales in their business, and correlate that back to in-home sales, right? You've spent time in the knowledge space, spent time in the automotive space and a number of other industries. What are some things that you can share that's going to be valuable to, someone who's been maybe only doing roofing door-to-door sales for their whole career, or, in-home sales for the whole career? Like, how do we get better? How do we sharpen our saw from outside perspective?
Right. So that's a great question. And I think that outside perspective is actually going to be really helpful, because it's not somebody who's just in the picture all day, every day. And you really have to take a step out of the frame to see the full picture. And that's essentially the perspective that I'm coming from. So hopefully it'll be helpful to give you the secret sauce, quote unquote, on a very tactical level. There's going to be a million different secret sauces I can give you, because every part of the sales process, there are so many different strategies and then tactics to it. But I think it would help to start with at least some basic rules, some fundamental rules. One of those that I've always believed in sales, and also nowadays as a business owner, is you only sell a product or a service that you believe in yourself and that you would buy yourself. So to make sales a lot easier, to make your salespeople, your sales team's jobs a lot easier, and your own life a lot easier, actually have a quality product or service that you're bringing to the market. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you could be the greatest salesperson on the planet. If it's a terrible product or service, even if you do sell it and get that deal done, get that money, you're not going to go very far, because word of mouth travels. And nowadays with social media and all these platforms, it's even more amplified. People would say word of mouth is no longer a factor. If anything, it's even more amplified nowadays. So you want to make sure the product and the service is actually quality, right? So rule number 1, only have a product or a service that you would actually buy yourself. There's a second rule to that is not necessarily sales related, but I just believe in it and I just wanted to share. Rule number 2 is only work for people, work with people, or hire people that you admire or respect. And I think that's huge, because, it relates to sales teams and sales efforts directly as well. I've ran a lot of sales teams, and I've built and hired and trained and even fired a lot of salespeople in my time. And I can tell you, salespeople are very much incentive driven, right? So you will get what you incentivize. That's a big rule right there. You have to be very careful what you're incentivizing in your business and in your process. And, if you're hiring people and building a team of people that you don't necessarily respect or don't think are going to represent your brand, your company, your product, your service ethically, at the highest standards, you're not doing yourself or your business a favor either. So those 2 rules would be very helpful just to get us started before we even talk about any, tactical sales strategies. So I'll turn it to you if you have any thoughts on that, and then we can continue.
No, I think you nailed it. And I think here's something to expose our space. It's very convoluted. It's tricky. Everybody has a story or have heard this horror stories in the construction space of, getting ripped off or not having a good experience or selling something, and then the company can't back it up, and then it just becomes a chaotic mess. So I think there's something majorly to be said about, like, the character of who you're working with, and all that circles back to something that the fundamental that I believe in. And if I'm, coaching somebody or working with a company, like, we are going to make sure that your core values are very detailed, very outlined, not just a picture on a wall, but they're actually interwoven into the fabric of your company. Okay. One of the questions I like to ask is, if I walk into your office and I ask someone, the first person I see, what are your company's core values? What answer am I going to get? Mm-hmm. Are they going to grab a notebook? Or are they going to look at the wall? Or are they going to just fumble? Like, that doesn't, just because you have that doesn't mean it's a core part of your business. Start there, because when you do that and you truly build and hire and train and find and create a culture built off those core values, then you plug into exactly what you're saying, is like, do your core values match? Does this company's values match with this salesperson? And if that is true, you can instantly set yourself up for success.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's always top down, right? It's always the core values that the leadership actually exemplifies, right? There's a famous quote, I think it's from Seneca, the philosopher. He says, or it's Marcus Aurelius, one of them. He says, don't explain your philosophy, embody it, right? So as a leader, that applies on a day-to-day basis. So if you actually embody your core values, your philosophies, what you want your company to be ran on, then your teams, especially your sales teams who are always observing and watching and, you know, probably wanting to get into management and leadership positions, they're watching and they're going to take most of your bad habits and a few of your good habits. So you better make sure those bad habits are completely minimized, if not eliminated. And you better make sure your good habits are right there, front and center, that everybody can see and duplicate. That's how you're going to build a high-performing sales team, because the sales teams always follow the culture. You know, the best driven sales teams that I've ever built have been because of the culture that we had in that specific office or that specific company. You know, it's been a culture of we work, you know, early and we stay late. It's been a culture of, you know, come in 6-7 days a week. It's been a culture of we expect results, not activity, right? It's all these things that we incentivize. So I think all of those are huge factors in terms of building the right sales team at a high level.
I love it.
Yeah. Going back to your question of some strategies that would help your industry, the next thing that I would say after those rules is I would look at sales fundamentals first before I look at product, service, industry fundamentals. So I would look at, in my business right now, just simple questions to answer, right? I'm talking like square one. In my business right now, do I have a step-by-step sales process? You know, do I understand what a business cycle is, from marketing and advertising to the sales process to actually conserving some of that capital, those profits that have been retained, and then reinvesting it? Do I understand what the sales process looks like step by step? Just very simple questions. And if so, do I have a step-by-step sales process from the moment we acquire a lead? How to acquire that lead is the marketing side of things, which I think right now we're talking about sales. So from acquiring a lead to walking them through every step of the sales process, do we have one in place? Do we have, you know, those SOPs built out? Is it written out? Is it clear? Are all our people, especially our salespeople, trained on all of this, right? And then looking at maybe where are some of the bottlenecks in that process? Where are we losing a ton of, prospects? There's 3 numbers we always track in sales. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. Your booking, showing, and closing ratios. Those 3 numbers are extremely important. So the book ratio is the percentage of leads that you speak to, how many actually become booked appointments, right? So that's your book ratio. The show ratio is out of those booked appointments, what percentage actually show up you can get in front of them. That's your show ratio, and the close ratio is out of the percentage that showed up, how many can you convert into a paying customer. So those 3 numbers are extremely important, because then you can look at, okay, this month our target was 100K revenue, we missed it, what happened? Looks like we had 300 leads come in, that wasn't a problem. What was the book ratio or show ratio? Show ratio was, let's say 75%, okay, pretty high, that's good. What was the close ratio? 3%. What's going on? Our sales guys aren't closing, right? So there's obviously a bottleneck there that we need to resolve. So you can start to pinpoint the bottlenecks in your business. That's why it's so important to have the sales fundamentals clearly built out, and then train your teams on that, communicate that. And when you have duplicatable processes, the results can become predictable. It doesn't matter if you're in the roofing industry, you're in the auto industry, you're in the fitness industry, you're in the online marketing space. It doesn't matter. When you have the numbers, when you have clear processes that are duplicatable, everybody's doing the same process, you can start to predict results or pinpoint problem areas, right?
Yep.
And I think that's extremely important for every business owner. 1% on problems, 99% on solutions. When you know the problems, you immediately shift your focus to solutions. How do we resolve that? How do we fix that? What are some things that we can put into place to make sure that, you know, next month we can get those results? So those would be some areas I would look at, and then I would move on to product knowledge, service knowledge, industry knowledge, competitive knowledge. It's important to know all of that as well, right? You got to know, I'm sure you would agree in your industry, you can tell me better than I can tell you. In that industry, you know, how important it is to know what the next competitor is quoting, what services are involved, what level of, you know, client care are they providing, what is that experience like? And I think this is a big separator for everybody as well in that space. Just like in the service industry, in the restaurant space, you're always competing with your prospects' last great experience. So what was their last really, really good experience with a product or service similar to yours, let's say with another roofer or construction company? So whatever that great experience was, that's their baseline. That's what they're comparing to. That's what you're competing with. So you better look to top that. In order to do that, of course, you have to have competitive knowledge, industry knowledge. So All of that is extremely important. But before we even get there, you have to handle the sales knowledge, the fundamentals of sales and business.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting how it does correlate from market to market. It doesn't matter what widget you're selling. There's some core fundamental elements that can be very important. And this for someone who is looking to grow a sales team and looking to, implement some of these things in the construction or roofing space. A lot of times we tend to think, well, the path of least resistance is to just go hire experienced salespeople and try to make my grass greener than than the grass they're on now, and I'll build a sales team that way. And then you have no control of the culture. Who knows what the culture is even going to be? And you're kind of dictated by their activity and their actions. You're kind of like flipping the script there. And I learned this early on, and that's why I decided, you know what? I took some, I learned and I hired coaches and I studied different sales processes, and we kind of took a lot of information we had and brought that into what was now I have a roofing company as well as my coaching company. We have a 7-step sales process that we teach, and we teach it in a way that it's not like, and we'll get into this because I know you mentioned that as well. It's not like scripted to a sense that you're just like a robot. These are the key processes key steps that you need to go through each time, and you can be flexible in certain areas to really connect and do that whole know, like, and trust, and really provide value and differentiate yourself. But the idea is, here's a process, here's a framework of a process. How do we create that into something that's yours? And I think the key there is somebody has to teach it. Somebody has to follow up. Somebody has to lead the team. Somebody has to coach and mentor their team. You're not just going to hire a bunch of salespeople and hope they do great. You're not just going to hire a crazy expensive sales manager and they're just going to poof magically appear. This great sales team is just magically going to appear. That's a tricky part of our industry. Mm-hmm. Is the chicken before the egg type of scenario, mm-hmm. and what we found is, as I have a business partner, and both of us have taken on certain roles in the sales leadership area of our business throughout the last decade or so, based on what our strengths and skill sets are to build that sales team. But I think a bought-in leader has to be willing and able to kind of drive that. I believe that culture, to be able to say, this is our process. Here's a checklist of how to implement it. Here's a training, even if it's not like really, really dialed in at first, having something in place to train somebody that doesn't know anything about your widget, whether it's construction or roofing or whatever it is, to be able to teach someone how to sell it, and then teach them how to the products and how to run the process, and then all circles around. It all circles back to the customer experience. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, because I preach that so much. Is what is your customer experience? If we focus our energy as a leader, as a CEO, or as an entrepreneur in the roofing construction space, especially home services, it's all about that customer experience. All sales, really, but it's so important. How do you differentiate yourself? You've got to provide an experience, because a lot of times in our space, they may only be buying one time. It's not like a repeat. You're not buying a car every couple of years, unless you're in a hail market that gets blasted every couple of years. But most homeowners only buy a roof or buy a remodel or a bath or whatever it is going to be only a select few times in their entire life. How do we create an experience that is so great that they're going ready to climb up to the top of the mountain and tell everybody, their family, their friends about it? That's the key, I think.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. And once again, just to refer back to your earlier point, this is why it's so important as a solopreneur, as a small business owner. You have to be that sales leader in your company, in your business. You have to know what the sales process looks like, and really how to acquire clients, how to generate revenue, how to retain clients, how to service them and provide that experience like you were saying. You have to know how to do that. Just like how in sales, your prospects borrow your confidence, in business, your team borrows your confidence. So that confidence better be there. And where does confidence come from? From a place of competence. You have to know in order to demonstrate that confidence. That's to come from a place of knowing. You can't just read a book or know some theory as well. You have to actually have some tangible experience yourself. That's why I always tell people when I'm speaking, if there's one thing I'm hoping for, It's that it comes across that I've sat in front of tens of thousands of prospects. I don't even know what number it would be. I'm not talking from reading a sales book like these books behind me. I hope that comes across. As long as that comes across, I don't care about anything else. But that's coming from a place of competence, right? True competence, actually knowing. So that's why, back to your earlier point, as a sales leader in your company, as any leader in your company, your part of that responsibility is also your sales leader. And you cannot delegate that responsibility. It's not something you just pass off. And even when you do hire sales managers, outside hire somebody to take on those roles, it's still your responsibility to know the ins and outs. It's still your responsibility to do those check-ins and be able to spot, the areas that need work, that need improvement, how to really take your business to the next level, even if those are monthly or quarterly check-ins. You still have to be able to see that. You have to have that eye, right? In military language, is seeing the front, right? You, as a leader, you have to see the front for yourself in order to make the right decisions. And that's why, again, everything is transferable to all other industries. Those fundamentals are always transferable, like you said. And this is why, even reading books from different industries, even just knowledge from all angles is so transferable to business as well. Like that seeing the front analogy that I just used. It's the same thing. It all applies to business as well. And one last comment I just wanted to make about hiring really experienced salespeople. I mean, I've been one of those myself. In the latter stages of my sales career, when I was doing outsourced sales and then partnered with a few people on some companies that we worked with, I was that experienced person that came in with pretty much a decade of sales experience already, and then really ramped up some of those teams and projects. And it did work. I mean, I came in and I really ramped everything up, and I doubt many other people would have been able to do that. But that's just a one-off case. I mean, if you're hoping for that to rely on that for your business success, it's not going to work well. And with all my own experience, and even from a place of being there myself, I would tell you, I'm not looking to hire super experienced or seasoned salespeople. I'm always looking to hire younger, hungrier salespeople who I can teach from scratch. Obviously, I have a bias towards this because I do a lot of sales training myself, so that's easy for me. But we have the systems in place, we have the platforms in place, we have all the trainings in place. But I'd always rather do that. Hire somebody who's younger, hungrier, newer, because we can teach them the right way. We can teach them the right culture, and they're going to be a better fit in the company. They're going to be a better fit in the team. Yeah. And you also don't need to pay so much more for somebody who's quote unquote more experienced to deliver the same results, if not, frankly speaking, lesser results, because they're comfortable, because they have higher expectations, because they have this sense of entitlement. And again, I've been that person myself. That's why I can speak on it so frankly. When you approach sales or approach business with a sense of entitlement, sooner or later, you will get humbled. Sooner or later. It may take a couple of years, but sooner or later, you will get humbled. But what you get with a newer person who you can train and you can really mold into your company culture is they don't have that sense of entitlement. They're hungry, they're excited, they're grateful to be learning and to be growing and to be earning. So I'm with you there. I'm 100% with you.
Yeah. Well, I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that we kind of learned, from the book, The Ideal Team Player with Patrick Lencioni. And it's the concept of, what you're looking for is people that are hungry, humble, and smart. Okay. And this doesn't mean book smart. This means like emotionally smart, emotionally intelligent, able to connect with people smart. So I want somebody that's naturally hungry, that naturally wants to win, and naturally wants to solve problems and learn and grow and take over and be the best that they can be. Somebody that is humble. Humility is so important in sales. It's like, that arrogance can completely destroy a culture. It can also hurt your sales. People don't want to be around a flashy, arrogant salesperson. They want to be around someone that's humble, that they can connect with. They want to buy from someone they can know and like and trust, right? So that humility is huge. And then that people smart, being able to adapt to the different types of people that you interact with. You don't want to be like, we talk about stereotypes right at the beginning. So you don't want to be, or in the acting world, this typecast, right? I don't want to be a salesperson that can only sell to one type of person. You got take DISC assessment. I can only sell to a high C person or somebody that's super passive and that I can only connect with that type of person. I can't connect with someone who's wants it done right now and wants it done, or the engineer type, or you got to be able to adapt to the different types of people. And that's where that smart piece comes in. And that's like, you get that with reps, you get that with humility, you get that by interacting with others, and you get that through inward lens, looking in the mirror and focusing on self-awareness and self-improvement. If we can focus on growing ourselves as leaders, if we grow as leaders, so does everyone else around us. Okay. If I'm just an employee and I have a family, I'm still a leader. I grow as a leader. Guess what happens? My family dynamic gets better. If I'm leading a team, I grow as a leader. Guess what happens? My team gets better. If I'm a CEO, if I'm the owner of a company and I focus on personal development, focus on growing myself as a leader, guess what happens? Everything rises, right? We all grow as the leader grows, as Craig Groeschel says on his podcast, which I love so much. So as we're starting to kind of wrap this up, my man, it's great insight. I guess my last question, usually most of the time I'm going to put my guests on a spot here, is give us the golden nugget, man. Give us the one thing that can help us level up our game and take our sales game to the next level.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I agree with everything you said in sales and in business, which to the earlier conversation, I think we were going to dive into, but we basically covered it, so we don't need to. It's the concept of scripts. This is why scripts don't really work, generally speaking, and don't really produce the results that people think they would produce, because scripts don't prepare you for real-time scenarios, for real-time objections, for real-time people. And I've never been a fan of any type of labels or categories to put myself into, because they're all just limiting factors. That's all they are, really. So if you're the type of person that says, again, this is why I don't like compartmentalizing sales. If you say, I'm an appointment setter, or I only sell to XYZ personality type, I mean, who is that helping? That's just to put yourself in such a bucket and give yourself a label like that. All you're doing is limiting your own potential. It's just something that's nonsensical to me. And I feel like scripts and having those processes in place are great, and you need to have them. They're like a scaffolding, right? I mean, to your audience, they definitely would understand. I hope I'm using that analogy right, by the way. I've been saying that for a very long time, for years and years, but I have zero construction or roofing or anything experience. So I hope I've been using that analogy right. But
sure, I think it can work. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, they're like the scaffolding, right? They're important to have. You have to have that there. That structure needs to be there. You know what to follow and you know what it should look like. But in real-time scenarios, you're not going to regurgitate a script word by word and have a prospect just follow along in just one seamless path and then get the deal done. That's not how it works.
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
Which leads me to answer your question around the one nugget that I think would be really helpful. And I think you're going to be surprised. It's not very sales tactical, but it is at the same time. And that is to be solution oriented. I don't necessarily talk about, having a positive attitude or a positive outlook or smile and dial, all these different terminology or different lines, these hooks that go with sales or sales training. Because in my own experience, in my own sales career, I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've had a lot of incredible results. I've, set records and crushed targets and whatever else, but it's also never been easy. It's never been handed to me. Everything was earned, not given. So to me, I'm not going to sit there and smile and dial, because I know cold calling and having that thing in place is difficult. It's a task. It needs to get done. So for me, instead of trying to fake it and be enthusiastic just because I think I have to, or be positive because I think I have to, I believe in being solution oriented. Being solution oriented by default implies you're optimistic, implies you're positive, because you're looking at solutions. You're looking at finding a solution to this problem. And as long as you can always be solution oriented, be creative in the sales process, always look for solutions ahead of time, preemptively, in every aspect of the sales process and every conversation you're having with your prospects, you're going to end up step by step, micro agreements at a time, getting to a deal, getting to a handshake, getting to a conclusion. That's what happens. And I think the same applies to life. If you're solution oriented in life, like I said earlier, 1% on the problem, look at the problem, acknowledge and understand it, and then immediately shift your focus to solutions. It also helps in life. You can always look for solutions. You can always find solutions. You can spend more time in doing than in thinking or dwelling in the problem. Just like we said earlier, have a bias towards action. But I think being solution-oriented is a great takeaway for every salesperson, every business owner, and for life in general.
I love that. What was that? 1% problem, 99% solutions. Focus on solutions. That's awesome, man. And one thing I'll add on to that, I think one of the most underrated attributes of great salespeople is curiosity.
I love it.
Like genuine curiosity.
I could not agree more.
right? If you have something where you are genuinely curious about, you're going to ask better questions. You're going to be you're going to be searching for those solutions. So, tap into your inner curiosity if you're a salesperson out there.
Yeah.
All right, my man. How do I get a hold of you, man? If I'm listening to this and I love the content, and hey, it was a great conversation. I think some really valuable stuff. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. How do we get a hold of you? What's your handle, platform, that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed this as well, and hopefully brought some value to your audience. The best way to reach me would be on my website. It's just my full name, pouyahaidari.com. You can also find me at Pouya Haidari on any social platform, either on the website or on any social platforms. If you reach out to us and just let us know you came from Randy's show, we'd be happy to throw in a free gift for you. I'd be happy to do something for you and make sure that we can help as best as we can.
Gotcha. And for those listening, that is POUYAHAIDARI.com.
That's correct.
PouyaHaidari.com. My man, I appreciate you. Thanks for jumping on, man. Great insight, great value. Thanks for sharing to our audience. And as always, if you like the show, if you listen to the show, if this is your first time on the show, listening to the show, watching the show, like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, share with your colleagues. It helps us out. It helps this thing grow and get better, and to serve our industry better, and to help people grow as leaders and as entrepreneurs and as successful salespeople. Thank you. Take care. God bless.